And welcome back, everyone. I'm so excited to talk about this use case for Helium. But before I do that, I want to acknowledge that this particular use case is still in development. And as this is quite a sensitive area of use, of course, I can't assume any liability. I want to encourage anyone that takes this use case forward to ensure appropriate fail-safe and backup measures. With that, let's get to it. So while I'll get into the technical details such as the cost analysis, the components, and the integration in a bit here, this use case is basically a response system to increase independence for the elderly. Now, all of my grandparents have passed, but let me tell you where this could have had immediate value. A number of years ago, my grandfather had a stroke that severely affected his mobility. One weekend, he fell down while getting out of his chair and ended up on the floor. Now, my grandmother tried to help him, but then she fell down on the floor as well. As exasperated as they were both unable to get themselves off the floor and spent the next few hours trying and failing again and again. Fortunately, they were good friends with the neighbor and had missed a number of phone calls such that the neighbor decided to check in on them. The neighbor was able to get my grandparents the help that they needed. Even as my own folks are getting on in years, they crave that independence and really don't want someone doting over them all the time. So combine that with any physical ailments that the need for independence could become detrimental, if not fatal. So this use case in particular centers in around elderly living in their own homes or in some sort of retirement community where for the most part they are independent and mostly able to care for themselves. So for this particular use case, the client lives in a retirement community in their own apartment and are categorized as independent. The retirement community does offer assisted living services that is kind of a la carte or with packaged pricing. Regardless of categorization, everyone in the retirement community wears a watch-like device with a button on it to call for help. Now, there is really no service level agreement, or SLA for those that are in the know, on this button press event. Anecdotally, this response time has varied from a few minutes to upwards of a half hour. If the resident is independent, that the calls for the for assistance will get routed to emergency services because of liability reasons. Now, if the resident is categorized as assisted living, then each response has its own cost schedule. While most retirement communities don't post these costs online, I can at least share what the client has told me. A standard response for a fall is about $8 for one person to come. If two people are needed, another $2 is added. If a lift assist device is required, it's another $3. So we're talking max of about $13 per fall. So if we can route even one of these calls for assistance to a friend or a family member, they will have saved a quarter of the cost of this sensor that I'll talk about in a minute. Said another way, one response by a friend or family member could pay the data for this sensor for a year. All right, so let's get into the technical details. The sensor I found in this use case is the T1000A from Seed, which I'm showing off right here. So there are two variants of this sensor. The A has the temperature, light, and accelerometers sensors loaded on it and costs about $40 at the time of this video, where the B has just the platform standard, which is location, button press, and the SOS mode. And that's available for about $10 less than the A variant. Size-wise, it can fit in the palm of your hand, it can fit in a pocket, or be, like I'm doing here, carried around on a lanyard. I did see an advertisement from Seed that a watch-like device was able to be prototyped pretty quickly, so that gives me hope for a wearable device in addition to this T1000. The events I'm specifically interested in from this device are the button press and the SOS mode. Now I have hopes for the accelerometer as it does things as I'm rolling it around, but there would probably need to be some machine learning or AI training on that particular event to turn it into some sort of automated alert. As this application is for the elderly, if they fall and hit their head, or maybe the sensor bounces out of reach, a welfare check could be prompted, which would be very beneficial. So for the sensor, you do need to configure the firmware before handing it over to the client. The SenseCap Mate app is a pretty easy to install and configure the settings. And rather than bore you with all those details and screens right now, I'm just going to give you some tips and settings that I've used for configuration in the description below. Now for integration, I've chosen to go with TrackPac for its utility of being able to alert on any event that the sensor can create and send that notification out via email and text message. Now, many in the Helium community would recognize BFG Neil as the owner of TrackPac. He also has his own YouTube channel, which I'll drop the links to all that and TrackPac in the description below. For this particular use case, I was able to set up alerts to both friend and family members, both near and far, for the button press and the SOS mode. I also set up a separate alert for myself and got the client to get alerted when the battery on the sensor is low. As of this video, the cost per device with TrackPac is about $15 a year for each sensor. All right, so now for the usage and learnings that I'd like to pass on to you. As the primary alert for this is a fall response, the client was willing to put a sensor in each room of their apartment and one on a walker or a wheelchair. So 2 of them are on lanyards like this, and the other 2 are just kind of laying on a table or a countertop. In retrospect, I'd recommend probably putting all of these sensors for this use case on lanyards, as it's just a versatile way of attaching it. They can go on the client, as I'm showing here, or they can be attached with minimal effort around a particular device. So what I'm thinking is, here's me ad-libbing a little bit. So I take this and then I wrap it around and then send it back through the loop. And then now I've tied it off on that device. Now you can see I've compromised the quick release system here, so that might be a problem for if I pull on this, or it can be a potentially a choking hazard or whatnot. So probably want to be sensitive to the location of where you're tying it on so that you get the quick release. Again, if that happens, then you want this to be able to break away, just like in a manufacturing environment. Awesome. So get yourself a good lanyard. Now, with that, it can be in these various common fall areas. So you want to think about where the client is falling. Usually at, like wherever they're watching TV is one, of course, in the kitchen and the bathroom. And then, like I said, on their walker or wheelchair, or even on their person. I'll link to this particular lanyard that I've been using so far. I'll give you a little bit more close-up of this. So there's the sensor here. And then this little key ring, I had to actually I had some in my junk drawer, so I do recommend getting one of those, because this hook right here cannot go through there. So that's that. And then there is a release system here as well, in case you want to just pull it off and go into 2 parts. And then there's a variable slider thing here to adjust positioning. And then last, and of course most important, is the safety release. So while the SOS mode is probably the most useful, I discovered that the client has a weaker hand strength, such that it's very difficult for them to have the dexterity to do the double press required to activate the SOS mode. And I don't know if I can capture the audio from this very well as far as a single press, but I will also do the double press just to kind of show this off here real quick. And now I'll deactivate it. So it's a double press to activate and a double press to deactivate. Now, I've just set up the events for this device to basically show how often this is actually occurring and how fast that SLA is to get this event from this device that we just put to my phone in this instance. And I just got the alert now. So you can say that that's, pretty much 30 seconds to a minute of response. So now I know this, and then if this was a family member, then they'd be getting this alert and being able to call and say, hey, are you okay? Do you need me to come over? Or just start on their way. So very, very useful. Now, I did check with Seed support on like that lack of dexterity to do the double press event. And they said that you can actually do the, change it over on the, they can do the custom firmware to require only one button press to activate SOS mode. And that's definitely possible. Or even they could add an extra setting to the configuration app to allow for switching of the criteria for SOS mode. So they offered that, but weren't going to seek through it right now. But it was just a special, kind of a special shout out to Seed support for being quick on the response there. And then they also gave me the tip of just to handle it via TrackPac, because TrackPac can generate an alert on either or both single press, button press, and SOS mode. So this is my standard recommendation for this use case, is to generate events for both single button press and SOS mode. One particularly troubling conundrum for the client was incidents in the middle of the night. Now, many have been in some sort of on-call role and are familiar with the need and the responsibility to respond to incidents, even if it's during their typical slumber. This is resulting in some extra research on my part to help the client's friends and families get alerted appropriately. And I'm just at the tip of the iceberg here. So if you've got some tips and tricks for this on-call situation and waking people up in the middle of the night, I'd love to hear any solutions to do to wake up those who are on call. Some early exploration of this regards some if this then that implementation in phones. You can do forcing through do not disturbs by adding favorite contacts and stuff, and then also setting up custom ringtones. So it sounds laughable, but there was one suggestion to integrate with bed hydraulics, if somebody has their own bed that has raise and lower, to basically be a forceful escalation method of like, hey, get your butt out of bed and respond to this. So since starting on this use case, I've had a couple future ideas that might be worth exploring, and would love to hear any of the others that you would have in the comments below. In this particular facility, the residents also carry around key cards. And if the T1000 was programmable enough to mimic that key card signal, then of course you have one device for access and also incident response, thereby encouraging them to have help available at all times. And of course that's, well, I'll get to it in a little bit about wearables as well, and two devices. So I mentioned the ML and AI auto alerting earlier. Incapacitation is very much a real risk. So auto alerting for welfare checks, or you might even be able to judge the severity of a fall with quick accuracy, that could definitely save lives and mitigate damage. Going back to the story about my grandfather, is that his stroke was actually precipitated by a bad fall. So this is very much something that would have a lot of inherent value if we can get the accelerometer analysis right. There's also the wearable that I talked about earlier, the watch device. While I know the client probably wouldn't be excited to wear two devices, there could be an opportunity to route events from just one device to more than one service. So in addition to the friends and family off of this device, could we actually hook up to the facilities services for monitoring and do the same type of event to them, so that you can feed two birds with one scone, as they say. So if friends and family can do welfare checks faster, then we're better off getting the right amount of urgency to the call for help. And it's great that the facility has some response, even if it's just emergency services. But we want to make sure that it's the right amount of urgency and that we're not overwhelming any existing systems. So to cap off this use case, I want to reiterate the value of these sensors and this usage to the client. So residents, caregivers, friends, family, all have experienced heightened peace of mind knowing that help was readily accessible through this application's efficient communication channels. Response time was reduced considerably, and reliance on emergency service or even a la carte response was avoided completely in some cases. While the devices haven't yet paid for themselves, enough responses have been directed through the sensor application to establish trust and also continued usage by the client. There's also increased autonomy as these intrusive check-ins are less necessary. Now, this is only anecdotally and perhaps maybe a little bit of confirmation bias, but it appears so far that falls decreased once the sensors were deployed. I'd love to get some more data on this. So if you run with this idea, please make sure to get some data of fall frequency before and after sensor development. And that's it. I just want to show you the websites that I'm using to show off this particular use case and the applications there. So let's go with this. So we have here, this is TrackPac, and just want to show off their website. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find any. I mean, there's some small screenshots here of integrations. And then if you click on the our app and then, where is it? Web portal. So the web portal, you saw it there for just a second. You can go back and hover on that or pause it if you want. But that was the web portal. It's very easy to use, very intuitive. So I highly recommend you check that out. And then this is the device that I'm using, the SenseCap T1000. And this is the A variant, so it shows all the buttons in here, the sensors. I didn't even mention it, but of course you could even, if they say it's on a wheelchair and the client is venturing forth into the environment, well, you could see and generate an alert if it's too long in very cold temperatures. So TrackPac can set up that monitoring as well. So that's really cool. And then plus you're able to know the location as well, wherever they are, especially if they're venturing out and going on their trips, because we want them to have autonomy, then you would know exactly where that alert was coming from. So pretty awesome there. And then here's the TrackPac's YouTube channel. Of course, I'll get the links and to all that and put that in. So hope you've enjoyed this case study. Just as a quick aside, Helium is doing a particular contest. And while I was to promote their sensor applications, so I think the winner of this will get $350 or something like that. And I wanted to share this use case with you, and it was just, hey, this is cool timing. So I'm just kind of finishing up this use case and deployment. So stick around. I know that the videos have been a little bit more sparse of late, but I don't want to inundate you with useless information, but a lot more is coming. And I hope you stay tuned. Remember, like, follow, subscribe, all that usual YouTube stuff. Appreciate y'all tuning in, and we'll see you next time.